Hi, I'm Phillips, European Tour winner and PGA coach, and in today's lesson I'm going to be teaching you how to clear those hips properly in the downswing. Okay, so let's get stuck in. How do we get these hips clearing out of the way properly in the downswing? Now, before I get into my version of the best way to do that, I just want to say that however much anybody's hips can actually physically turn is obviously very individual. So the worst thing that anybody can do, which happens a lot unfortunately with instruction, is go onto YouTube, look up somebody like Dustin Johnson who's got incredible range of movement in his body, and to start thinking that you need to emulate that amount of hip turn. The only thing that's important is that you're turning your hips as much as you can. Okay, so don't compare yourself to a Ricky Fowler or a Dustin Johnson, these guys that are in the best shape of their life and they're, you know, obviously the best players in the world. Most people are not going to have that level of movement and mobility available to them. Okay, I certainly haven't got it, and I never had it in my career, even when I was top 50 in Europe. So movement and mobility is very specific to the individual. Yes, we can stretch, but stretching, static stretching or dynamic stretching for that matter, doesn't actually increase your dynamic mobility. So when we're doing something, the golf swing takes about a second or a second and a half, depending on who you are, to swing the club. And in that tiny time frame, at the sort of speeds that we're swinging the club, even for a poor level amateur or 24 handicap, the ability to move at speed is a completely different thing to stretching or doing yoga or anything like that. So that's something for another video. I am a qualified gym instructor as well, but I'll get into that in another video. But don't think, oh, I can do some stretching and I'm going to get masses of dynamic movement change. You won't. Okay, so don't waste time in the gym. Just focus on the keys I'm going to give you in this video and turn those hips effectively and as much as you possibly can. So let's get stuck in. I urge you to watch my videos on how to start the downswing, where I get into a lot of detail about the arm structure and everything else. But in this specific video, obviously we're focusing on those hips. And the one thing I want to really get into straight away is the concept of your tailbone, okay, or the sacrum, somewhere around the sacrum here. Okay, basically just at the base of your spine. And I'd like you to focus in on that area, and the reason I'm asking you to do that is because when you start to feel these hips turning in the downswing, I'd like you to really imagine that your tailbone is moving away from the target. Okay, now that can be a little bit strange because you're thinking, well, we're moving forward onto the front foot, surely the pelvis is moving in that direction towards the target. And yes, initially in that first phase of the downswing, you're going to feel some weight shift, but as your mass, as your center of mass is moving towards the hole, you actually want to feel that your tailbone is doing a bit of a backup. It's reversing, if you like. And you can see that if I concentrate on reversing my tailbone, it actually causes quite a lot of hip rotation. So we don't even need to think of the hips turning if we concentrate on the tailbone moving backwards. So as we're moving towards the target with our body, if that tailbone feels like it's going backwards away, you actually get a tremendous amount, or you'll get your maximum amount of hip rotation. So that's a key thing to focus in on. The other thing to remember is that when we want to rotate something maximally, that there's 2 points on a circle. If we were thinking of a circle and we want that circle to rotate as fast as we can, we've got a left side and a right side, if you like. Now, if we compare that to our hips, obviously we've got the right hip and the left hip here, we need to use what's called a coupling force. So in other words, there's no good using one side only. So if I only thought of pulling my left side out of the way, that would leave my right side a bit redundant. I wouldn't be utilising it to its maximum effect. So what we've got to picture and actually initiate in our mind is the fact that we want to drive the right side of the pelvis forward at the same time as the left side is pulling back. So it's very much a coupling force. And by using both sides of the pelvis, firing the right and pulling with the left, we again get maximum rotation that's available to us in our pelvis. Okay, I can't stress enough, I don't want you to compare yourself to anybody else. A great example of a great golfer that had relatively poor hip rotation was Greg Norman. He was a world #1 golfer, and he actually was obviously trying to rotate his hips as much as he could, but if you compared him to Dustin Johnson, you would see half the amount of hip rotation at impact. So great example there of not needing to copy to play to your maximum potential. Now I'm going to go ahead in the next phase of this video and hit a slow motion 5-iron shot for you, and I want you to just watch how my hips move, and I'm sort of somewhere in the middle really. I've certainly got nowhere near the rotation of a Dustin Johnson, but I may have a little bit more than a Greg Norman. But what I want you to look for is I want you to look for how my rear foot will stay relatively planted until very close to impact. You won't see my rear foot coming off the ground until just prior to impact, and then it will start lifting through. And that's another good sign that I've used as much hip rotation as I can. I haven't let that foot just come way forward, and I advise you to go and watch my video on how to use the feet properly in the golf swing. I'll get into the foot motions in more detail, but just check out this slow motion swing. Okay, so hopefully you'll have noticed there that there wasn't a tremendous amount of hip rotation in my swing, and that's just the movement that's available to me. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't using all of my efforts to drive both that right and left side, like the coupling effect that I was talking about there. I was also focusing on feeling that tailbone rotating away from the target. So as long as you create the maximum rotation for you, that's all that you can do. Please don't compare yourself to a Dustin Johnson. Now, what I'd like you to do is go back and look at that slow-mo of my swing there again, and there's a couple of key things I want you to notice. One is that at the top of my backswing, you'll have seen quite a lot of my lead leg in the view of the camera, and then as I started down, as soon as my arms reached parallel to the ground, that left leg would have disappeared. It would have disappeared behind the right. So that's just showing you that actually, even though there wasn't as much hip rotation as you'd see in a Dustin Johnson, there was quite a considerable hip move from the top of the swing down to that point. So left arm parallel to the ground, you'll see that my left leg disappeared, and then into impact you will just start to see the leg appearing again in view. So there was maximal hip rotation there for me, and that's key. As long as you're getting the maximum hip rotation for you, that's all this video is about. It's about getting you to use those hips effectively. So in summary then, we want a coupling effect. We want right and left, left pulling back, right driving forward, and we want to sense that that sacrum or tailbone is shifting away from the target. It's going to help you use those hips the most effective way possible. I hope you're enjoying these videos. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and head over to my website where there's a tremendous amount of information, especially on the psychology of performance, which is really what this game's all about. We all want to play well when it counts, so head over there, there's a lot of information.